Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading the positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show, and with me right now I've got a very special guest. He has worked in WWE as well as the independent scene in New England. He is one half of the tag team The Heart Throbs. Pleased to welcome the one, the only Antonio Thomas. Welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here, Stanley.
Yes, it's my pleasure. So, you're from Springfield, Massachusetts. Tell me about your
Yep.
childhood and upbringing.
Um, just had parents, mostly raised by my mom, but my dad was there, um, a little bit growing up. We got a great relationship now, but had one sister. Just always loved sports. Got into wrestling when I was about 9 years old and just became enamored by it, just consumed me, that and sports and you know, GI Joes and toys and yeah, typical childhood, just every Saturday morning and every Monday night, just wrestling nonstop, all the magazines, figures, everything.
Yeah, the 80s definitely were a hot period in terms of star power. You had Hogan, you had Macho Man, you had Jake the Snake Roberts. Oh man, I could
I
be
mean,
here
it's
all day.
it's it's you've always had hot periods where there's been stars and more anyone
Exactly.
now.
Attitude Era.
But yeah, that's whatever you grow up with as a child, that's always going to be more special, for you throughout your life when you look back on things.
Who were some of your favorites growing up?
Well, I mean, right away I loved Hulk Hogan, but then I started to really, after a year or two, really started to um just gravitate towards the heels, the Ric Flairs, Ted DiBiase. I love Ted DiBiase. Love the Four Horsemen. Love Mr. Perfect. Obviously, I also love, like the Road Warriors, Demolition, Ultimate Warrior, Psycho, Sid Vicious. But mostly, I love Ricky Steamboat too. Ricky Steamboat. And then, as I got into my teens, like Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, um, but those, Steamboat, Flair, all those guys. I mean, that's stuff that I watch today and always will watch.
What was the point for you where you decided I want to do this for a living?
Probably in high school, just because I was always playing sports with my friends and always doing stuff, but just like team sports really weren't for me. I did a little amateur wrestling in high school, not much, but I just once I got into like lifting weights and stuff, and it was more everything was on you, the onus was on you, and then just I was like, I'm never going to be the biggest guy in the world, but if I can be in the best shape possible, um, then that's what I would aim for. And I said, why not me? You got one go around, and I I tell kids to this day, like, why not you? Why can't it be you? Why can't, you know, all the people you grow up idolizing in wrestling or any sport, they were like you at one point. So, you can make that happen. And that's my mom was super supportive. And so yeah, high school um was when I was like, yeah, I want to do this.
Yeah, it's the motivation, that you're telling people. It's always you never want to give up. You always want to have the desire and passion to follow your dreams. And wrestling, I know the sports background especially, help prepare you for training to be a wrestler. Talk to me about your experiences learning how to get in the ring.
I started at Killer Kowalski School. Um, and it was tough. I thought I just hitting the ropes, you get bruises, landing on your back, taking bumps. That's not normal. It's not something we're conditioned to do in any sport unless, you take up judo or, learn to fall in amateur wrestling or grappling. Um, so it was tough at first, but after a couple months, I thought I broke my rib, took a couple weeks off, a month off or so. Didn't know if I wanted to do it. And then just went back and just started to get in a groove. Just like anything, you need reps and you need to get in a groove. And once that happened and I started to feel comfortable, I think I really, made some progress and I was off and running.
Talk to me about some of the advice that you got from Kowalski and some of the people that you learned under when starting out in the business.
Um, just try to make everything look as real as possible. You hear it all the time. You know, think shoot and then work. And you don't understand it at the time. It might take years to sink in, but you know, it's it's simulated combat. So it needs to look real, without, you need to be the magician that saws the woman in half without really sawing her in half. So just doing that. And then Steve Bradley was a guy I trained under early on, and he was always listen to the crowd. Don't He goes, I can tell if a match is good or bad by listening to the crowd. I don't even have to see it. I don't care what moves you do, but I want to hear the crowd. And that's really what it's all about because we're there for the fans and it's for them to react.
Fans love wrestling. They love cheering the good guys, they love booing the bad guys, and it's all about that interaction because it's
Yeah,
special.
wrestling is just like any book. It's like any TV show, anything with you have an antagonist and a protagonist, and that'll never go away. And that's why people want to boo someone, they want to cheer someone, and that's the essence.
It is, and it's just such an incredible atmosphere and environment to be around.
There's nothing like being in there and hearing the crowd and everything going well. You're working with your opponent and getting to the back and just um yeah, just that is the best feeling in the world. So
When you made your debut in the early 2000s, talk to me about your first few matches. Were you scared? Were you
I
nervous?
was I was scared. Yeah, I was so nervous. They were horrible matches. Probably my it was right after 9/11 in 2001. And they were just I took like a phantom bump but it was when I got to the back, it was like the best feeling ever. I was like, I knew I got to do this. I got to get better at it. And I just wanted to wrestle as much as possible, whether it was setting up rings locally here in New England and just traveling with other people to shows. Just started to just every weekend, I wanted to do something. I just couldn't wait for training and just going to the gym and it was just totally immersed. Um, I was working as a teacher's aide at the time, so it allowed me weekends off. I could get out of school at 2 o'clock, and it was I just wrestling was my job. The other thing was just to kind of, you know, um, have something financially. So
Yeah, and it's always good to have that backup plan, have that just in case
yeah,
something doesn't.
absolutely, yeah, yeah, yep.
And so, what point did you meet your tag team partner?
I met him early on in my training before I even had a match. I started training at a place closer to Springfield because it was like 10 minutes away, and I met him there. Smart Mark Sterling from AEW was training there at the time, and yeah, so we met then, and we really didn't team up until about 3 years later, 2004. Started teaming up regularly for a local promotion. Um, but then we got to OVW and we got to WWE separately. So I guess he moved down there and then I got signed as a singles. And then Jim Cornette put us together once we were in OVW, and you know,
Any fun memories you want to share about your time in OVW?
it was all like once we started teaming, it was some of the most fun I've ever had in wrestling. It was tough at first because I'd never really been away from home in the area, and then moving down south. Louisville is not really too south, but um, kind of that southern, slow, relaxed southern way of life when you grow up in the Northeast and everything's like, you know, just everyone's in a hurry all the time. So just being away from my friends and my comforts, it was rough. It was a rough first few months for me, but and I just had some injuries. I tore my hip, burst a sac in my elbow, which I never had, I'd never really gotten injured before. So in wrestling. So um, but yeah, once we started teaming as the Heartbreakers, it was the most fun, maybe the most fun I've ever had in wrestling. And it was only for 3 months, and then we got called up. But it was awesome. I would have loved to been there in OVW, like at least for the rest of the year. But you can get the call at any time to debut, so you gotta always be ready. You gotta always be prepared.
And making that transition is a whole nother breed in itself too, because you're working in front of big crowds, big arenas.
Working in front of a big crowd is so much easier than in front of a small crowd. Especially like working in front of 10 people is harder than working in front of 10,000. So it was mostly just trying to find, what WWE wanted from us, what there was never kind of clear, hey, we want you to be this and act this way or do this or whatever. So and plus, we were the youngest guys there. We were there. We were on Raw. We were learning live without a net. So we were literally learning, you know, on TV. And it was tough because you're there with everyone else on the roster at the time was 10, 15, 20 years in. And, here we are, we're 2 or 3 years in. So it was tough. We did as good as we could, but it was like we were always swimming upstream.
Whose idea was it to be known as the Heartthrobs, that gimmick?
They changed. Well, Jim Cornette gave us the Heartbreakers gimmick and just like the furthest thing from us. So we just kind of made it as like crazy and unique as possible. And it was totally different in OVW. It was, we were baby faces, kind of fun loving. And then they didn't really give us say, hey, be that, or hey, be like, the Hollywood Blondes, or be like an arrogant team. They didn't really say that. They just said, well, we're going to change your name to the Heartthrob. So, but you just you are playing a part. So it's like being an actor. You gotta whatever they give you, this is your chance, and you gotta try to make the best of it. They broke up some teams. Really, it was us, Regal and Tajiri, and then Hurricane and Rosie for like 6 months on house shows. Then Kate and Murdoch came in. Then like the Highlanders and the Spirit Squad came a little after that. But they would always, it wasn't like the 80s where there was like 5 or 6 heel and babyface teams on each side. It was like they had a couple teams, and then so like we worked with Hurricane and Rosie like on all the house shows for 5 months. Um so it was, I wouldn't call it if you combine SmackDown and Raw, maybe there were a handful of tag teams, but it
Hmm.
was they kind of cycled in,
This
you
was
know,
around the brand split because you guys were on Raw and SmackDown had
this was 2005,
other.
2006. We were on
Yeah,
Raw. We were never on
yeah.
SmackDown. Yeah.
Any fun memories you want to share about your time in WWE?
I mean, just usually every house shows, I guess. TV can always be stressful and whatnot, but house shows where you could just go out and, like I said before, react to the crowd and just react to what's going on in the ring and just kind of have fun, kind of go out there and, put a few things together and then react to the rest. So, wrestling's acting, but it's more so reacting. So that was the fun part. Just doing the house shows, I think were the most fun part.
You had mentioned you'd worked with Hurricane and Rosie a lot. What was it like being around those guys?
They're super cool, easy going, easy to work with. Just we just work so much together that we kind of knew what each other did, and we didn't really have to, all right, see you out there, and all right, you know, find out the finish for the night and then just go from there.
And you guys were released in 2006. What happened?
We were just, as I said, we were just always swimming upstream and just could never get our footing under us just because we were so young and just kind of didn't know what direction they wanted to take us. For me, it sucked, but it was kind of because that was my dream, but at the same time, it was a relief because then I could go back to the Indies. I could go, was able to really never saw the world. Went to Puerto Rico and England with WWE, but never got to, until I got out of WWE, I never got to go live and train and wrestle in Japan, go to Europe, go to Puerto Rico, go to all these places, go to Ring of Honor, go to TNA, do all that stuff that I did. I've been in wrestling 25 years. This is my 25th year in wrestling,
Congratulations.
training or wrestling, and pretty much been wrestling every year through that. So, um, the WWE time was just a couple years, so that's a very small part of it. So, again, it's like being a character actor, and you gotta, whatever your part is, whatever your role is, you change it to whatever the promoter or the director needs.
Yeah, I mean, you got to work in so many different countries and get to see different parts of the world, as you said. It is different because when you're in one company, yeah, you go around the world to some, but when you're on your own, you experience it differently. So it's like a night and day difference almost.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's good to have a balance of both. The paycheck and being on the biggest stage is the biggest thing, but you want to be with the best, and but you also want to have that freedom to be yourself and to um it's cool to it's cool to make your own schedule and sell your own merch and do that stuff and for yourself. It's cool until it's like not cool anymore, and then you're like, man, I just want my flight sent to me. I just want this paycheck so it's a balance.
Do you keep up with the product at all today?
Yeah, I mean, still wrestle. I haven't wrestled. I never did the heartthrob stuff outside of WWE, just Chikara afterwards. And the last 8 years, I've wrestled as Thomas Santel, which is kind of a takeoff on a grappler. George McFly met Lou Thez. So, um, and that's kind of how I got to Beyond Wrestling and doing the school now with Beyond and just kind of got out on the indies doing that. Yeah, I watch, I try to watch the WWE pay-per-views, premium live events. I try to watch, my wife actually watches wrestling more than me. She'll watch Raw. I'm, with a little one at home, it's harder with TV time and just time in general. So I watch a lot of like older stuff, or there's a couple really good Twitter feeds that have, this day in wrestling history, or will post some great, some really good matches. So stuff like that. But I follow it, but not as intense as before. I have to watch more old stuff just to study just for myself as a trainer to um to keep my skills as a trainer sharp, like, because there's a lot of things you do when you're a wrestler or when you're training where you don't really think about, but then you get asked that question, hey, how do I do this or what? You're like, I don't know. I just did it. So then you got to kind of go back and really analyze stuff and pick things apart. And I love doing that.
Now, outside of wrestling, I know you've done a lot of charity work and have done stuff to help out in your community. Let's talk about some of the things that you've done to make a difference.
Just so I got into teaching in the last time I was in Japan in 2010. I broke my collarbone, tore up, everything in my shoulder. I had to get surgery, so I decided for 3 years I worked as a teacher's aide before WWE while I was pursuing wrestling. So I went back into teaching, started subbing, and then started working with special needs kids, special ed classrooms. And then I started doing that after school with a couple teenage special ed boys with two families, which kind of led me into just down the teaching path. And I was like, I can teach and wrestle at the same time. I can pursue both. And so did that. I also through my, martial arts background and I've done martial arts my most of my adult life just because I love the training. I love learning. And it's really helped me in ring. It really takes your instincts and just your movements. It really adds that realism and just, it just, I can't say enough about what martial arts will do for in-ring work. I certainly speaking for myself, it's helped it a lot, but started doing kids, a couple of kids classes a week, teaching kids jujitsu, grappling, and then also at that gym started doing a strength and conditioning class, teaching boxing as well. And through my teaching, I'm a health and PE teacher by trade the last 8 years, but did a lot of special ed. I was in 5 years. I was a adaptive health and PE teacher in a private therapy school, which was really fun. And then the last 5 years, I've taught homeschooled kids. So, um, and just looking, and along with the last 3 years being the coach at the Beyond School, just giving back that way, always giving back to younger wrestlers that would ask me stuff and befriend, I being around 24, 25 years, you get to go through two, three generations. So you come up, there's all different waves of people that you've come up with. When I got out of WWE, the Tommaso Ciampas, the Ivars, the Kofi Kingstons, those guys were coming up. Then a couple of years later, it was the Matt Tavens and the Mike Bennett's and the Dijaks and those guys. So, and it's constantly been that way. This last wave at Beyond, 4 or 5 years ago, was the Carmelo Hayeses, the MJFs, pretty much anyone that's been that went on to AEW. So you see those different waves, and you always want to give back and um, give any pointers, and I learn as well. Those are my peers. I never look at it as I'm the veteran, I know it all. No, you're always, as a teacher, as a worker, as a wrestler, performer, you're always working, you always want to get better, and you're always proving yourself. So, um, so you can't ever lose fact of that you always want to improve, and you always really, to whether it's to yourself or to other people, you gotta prove yourself.
What is it about being a teacher, being a coach that gives you the most joy?
Um, just helping others and seeing the building the relationships, having kids that you had 5 or 10 years ago, seeing them, out at the grocery store and saying, oh, hey, having those relationships. And when you get an email or when from one of your students saying, you're my favorite teacher, I love you, make health and PE fun, you made school fun for me. Um, because I really never had that as a student. I hated school. So I want to make it enjoyable. I want to make kids want to learn. So that part of it, being a health and PE teacher, obviously I'm like the toy section of the school subjects. So it's certainly helps to do that. But I've taught all subjects, so it's about making them fun and making them relatable to the kids, and to have them come back and say, "You're my favorite," or "I loved your class. You're my favorite class." That's what makes it worthwhile.
Definitely helps to teach something that you love and are passionate about. And it's so cool that you're able to help make a difference in these students' lives.
Yeah, I love doing it. Thank you.
All right. Well, this has been wonderful getting the chance to speak with you. I want to say thank you for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find more about you? If you have any social media handles or anything you want to plug, feel free to promote.
Yeah, so Beyond Wrestling and Wrestling Open, you can find those on Twitter. And then Bio Pro, Beyond Institute of Pro Wrestling. It's at Bio Pro on Twitter. That's our school. We've been, going on for 3 years now, in our third year, and graduated six students last year, and more to come. And just if you're interested, if you're in the Northeast and you want to train up here, I mean, if you know Beyond Wrestling has a 16-year history of pretty much everyone that's been, half of WWE and AEW have been there, been through there. So, you can, if you're interested in training, Beyond Wrestling at gmail.com will take you, to get in contact with the school. And yeah, that's it. So not really about me. I don't really go on social media a lot, but yeah, Beyond Wrestling, Wrestling Open, and Bio Pro at Bio Pro on Twitter.
All right. Well, thanks again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Thank you, Stanley. Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care. This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.